All right, welcome back to another episode of the NoFX podcast. I'm your host, Lane, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Hercules. What's up?
What's going on?
Same old, same old. You'll have to excuse us. We just keep getting busy and not getting this stuff done, but we are back just in time for a new set to release. So, of course, that means we have to talk about it. So, of course, y'all have seen spoilers. People are already talking about it. The reviews are out, but we're going to give you our 2 cents on what we think some of the best cards are from Lost Caverns of Ixalan. So we've done this a few times now. I think we've done okay as far as what picks we've made and some of the stuff that has come out. But at some point, we're probably going to do a review and we'll find out if we know what we're talking about, if we're full of shit. So yeah, that's what's on the menu for today. We're just going to jump right into it. We don't have any housekeeping or anything to talk about, probably because we've been slacking. So feel free to mention anything you like in the comments. See if there's something we missed and you or something that you think we got wrong. Let us know. Give us something to talk about for later episodes. So we're going to jump right in. We have a few honorable mentions, less than some of the other sets that we've done, and then we've got a top 10. Again, disclaimer, no official order. It really doesn't matter where you put these. They're just the ones that we think we'll actually see some play. And some of these honorable mentions might as well, but they're like in a deck, or maybe they're more like in a casual setting, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
So first one we started off with is the Bone Horde Dracosaur. You want to read that one off for me, and then I'll tell the people why we picked it.
You got it. It is 2 red and 3 for a 5/5 creature that is a dinosaur dragon. It has flying, first strike, and be prepared, everybody buckle in. All these cards have massive walls of text. Good God. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play them this turn. If you exiled a land card this way, create a 3/1 red dinosaur creature token. If you exiled a non-land card this way, create a treasure token.
So, we were talking about this prior to recording, and we basically had said, this one's probably not that good. Where does it go? It doesn't have a home. Like, maybe in Magda, because it's a Draggy, you could suit her up, but like, why when there's better ones? And honestly, that's kind of where it was like, we weren't going to talk about it at all. And then I was like, oh, wait, a deck where it could maybe go is Kalia. I know Kalia doesn't see a ton of play anymore, but she's still a powerhouse, especially in casual formats. But I still play her in CEDH. You can do some powerful stuff with some of the demons that, the Razakeths and the Villuses of the world. But she also has, as part of her attack clause, slam down a dragon from your hand. I think in my own personal list, I'm not on any dragons currently, but this one is something I put on my considering because, as soon as we talked about it, because it was like, this actually could be pretty good because you slam it into play and then you get additional value depending on what happens. So, and it's repeatable, is it not?
Yeah, it's every beginning of your upkeep. So, I mean, every turn you're going to get, at bare minimum, a 3/1 red dinosaur token or a treasure token. Sometimes you're going to get both. So, and those 2 cards you can cast. So it's pseudo, draw 2, make a treasure or a 3/1 or both every upkeep of your upkeep, on a 5-mana 5/5 flying first strike creature. So it's a lot of value on one card. Doesn't have, like you said, maybe
when you could cheat it in.
Yeah, I mean, it's just repeatable advantage every turn. So it'll eventually find somebody will find a good use for it. I mean, it'll be a casual freaking beat stick, and it provides a lot of value. So.
That's pretty much all there is to it. What's next?
Next, we have Breaches, the Eager Pillager. 1 red and 2 for a 3/3 legendary creature. It's a goblin pirate. A lot of pirates in this set. It has first strike. Whenever a pirate you control attacks, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. Create a treasure token. Target creature can't block this turn. Or exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn.
So I think that it's obviously a little worse than the original Breaches because, well, it doesn't have partner, so that immediately makes it a mono red deck. There is enough pirate support to where you can get it to where you are attacking with enough of them to where you get all 3 triggers every single combat, which is not nothing, but it's also not amazing. First place we thought of was possibly like a Malcolm Kedis, where, like, at least when I was playing it in CEDH, I still ran several pirates because I was on Pyro Heroes and pod lines and things to get to Glinthorn. So maybe there, but I think where it might find homes a little easier is probably stuff like Prosper or other decks like that want that impulsive card draw, because he can get that and he can trigger it by himself.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of impulsive card draw that they've been given red lately, and Here's another example of it. I've heard talks of like Crom partnering with another commander that's got partner that's we're going to talk about here. That this might see something in a deck like that where the pirate ability might matter. But yeah, I think it's a 99. I don't see this as a commander itself.
If you're
but
on
in the
Malcolm
99,
Breaches, you probably put this in there because Breaches is already
Sure.
doing that, and you got a second copy. But yeah,
there's a surprising number of like, I mean, you could run like Changeling Outcast, but there's also just Dockside's a pirate, Ragavan's a monkey pirate. So there's other pirates that can trigger this.
yeah. And I've even seen like I had a casual pirates deck years ago when they first the first Commander Legends came out, and we got all these extra pirate commanders. And then going through like the old Ixalan, there was quite a few, and then some of the other stuff that got errated. It's not a terrible thing to say that you could probably make a deck that's mostly pirates that's pretty good. Just the synergies alone make it to where maybe at some point this is replacing something else in the deck that's not a pirate because it's just doing the same thing, but it's a pirate, so thematically it works. Whatever the case, it's not amazing, but it's something. It does stuff. I think it's going to be a 99 card for sure.
For sure. It's also a goblin. So I know people try goblin decks as well. So who knows?
Yeah. Next one is one that I selected as a kind of honorable mention for the popper side of things because it's essentially the cheapest edict that comes on a permanent. It's Tithing Blade.
Got it here for you. It's 1 black and 1. When Tithing Blade enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a creature. I should mention it's an artifact. And it has craft with creature. Craft is another new mechanic. 4 colorless and a black. Exile this artifact. Exile a creature you control or a creature card from your graveyard. Return this card transformed under its owner's control. Craft only as a sorcery. On the backside, it is at the beginning of your upkeep. Each opponent loses a life. You gain a life.
So backside for CDH, obviously not something that would ever be done. I can see this being played in a mono black deck that is running all the rest of the edict effects that wants to have that sort of control. Otherwise, it's probably not seeing CDH play. But in Pauper, fucking amazing. Because every other edict that isn't a spell is like Fleshbag Marauder or Slum Reaper. They're like 3 to 4 drops. This is less. It's still... And then in particular decks, like I'm putting this in my Sivris list, I'm already on several effects that do the draining of opponents. So just getting that little extra tick every turn doesn't seem like a lot, but over the course of a game, maybe you get 5-6 ticks in. That could be the difference between somebody living and dying, especially with the lower life total of the format. So it's not CEDH. It was just one of my pet cards from the set that I really liked.
Now that we're reviewing it, I'm looking at this thinking it's possibly an Amanatu card, the Planeswalker, the Esper Planeswalker that blinks things. I am in my old list. I don't know if I still have it in there or not. I used to play the black enchantment, Liliana's something or other, that it would ETB, each opponent would sack a creature, and if you had a Planeswalker, you'd make a 2/2 or so. I don't remember exactly what it did, but it was there for the repeatable blink sack, so maybe an Amanatu card, but I don't know.
I could see it there. Also, what's the Sultai Muldrotha? This could be something where if you had a way to sack artifacts, perhaps you could then recur it and keep people's creatures off the board. I know I knew some people that played that and did that kind of stuff with Fleshbag, and it's quite frustrating to play against, especially if you only had the one creature and then you're like trying to put... Every time you put one out, they just make you sack it, and you're just like, well, what the fuck do I do? I'm just going to sit here. Yay. So it could be potentially powerful in some lists, but for the most part, I wanted to focus on it being a popper card. It's pretty good for a common. We'll say that.
Sure.
What's the
next up? Scytheclaw Raptor. So this one's kind of cool. 1 red and 2 for a 4/3 dinosaur, and it has whenever a player casts a spell, if it is not their turn, Scytheclaw Raptor deals 4 damage to them. So my initial thoughts on this one, maybe like Rurik Thar. If somebody's playing just the pseudo damage the hell out of somebody when they try and do something, maybe.
There's been times where I've tried to make kind of these types of a deck where Rev's Mogus list, even though like this isn't always necessarily going to ping, like that was kind of what his whole deck is like shit that makes people get punished for things that they're doing. So I could see this going in his deck. But like I said, I've tried to make some of these pinger ones. There was I don't remember who the commander was, but there was a Groll commander. I want to say it was a god. But I tried to include these because there's like that enchantment where it's like if they play a spell, they take 2 damage, and then there's the play a land, take 2 damage, this, that, and the other thing. And if you can apply a bunch of these and get them out on the board, people can't do anything without taking tons of damage. And then you add in the triplers or doublers, and it becomes really out of hand really fast, which is basically what his Mogus list does. So I think that's the kind of place where it would go if you're in an aristocraty style, or I mean, hell, like Exodus could probably use this, because I used to play that as like an aristocrat style deck, and this is just adding extra damage to the pile. It's also
kind of a
3 mana for a 4/3 is not bad. Like,
yeah, and it's only one red and 2, so yeah, beat stick stacks isn't the worst type.
It didn't make our main list because it's kind of niche, but it's still a powerful effect that can do some damage over time. So
up next we have Francisco, the Foul Marauder, and it's what is it? 1 black and 1, a 0/1 flying legendary bird pirate. So here you go with your pirates again. It can't block, which is unfortunate. And whenever 1 or more pirates you control deal damage to a player, Francisco explores. And it's got partner. Explore, if you don't remember, it's reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land, you put it in your hand. If it's a non-land, you can put it in your graveyard or put it back on top of your library. I believe you get a +1/+1 counter.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Does it get the counter if it goes on top of your library or not? I don't honestly remember.
Don't recall. But I know that Explorer is kind of an underwhelming mechanic. There are a couple cards throughout the years that have had it on there that I thought were okay, because it was like a repeatable way to explore, like whenever a creature ETBs, you explore, like kind of thing. That I'm not terrible. It's not terrible, but this is very much focused on being pirates. So yeah, as you mentioned earlier, people were talking about playing it with Crom just to have a Grixis shell with this weird, but it's like, I almost feel like if it was more like Roger, where it's a 0-drop, that maybe this enables some things that we would want. It would be kind of like, the way Roger enabled like Timna per se to like make super fast starts and Turbo Nos stuff and whatever. Like, it could be good in that sort of fashion if it was, but 2 mana for a 0/1, not a great rate. Yes, it gives you the trigger abilities off of pirates. I mean, you're probably looking at playing this with more realistically like Malcolm or Breaches. So you're either Dimir or Rakdos, so you have tons of good, reliable combos in the deck, and then this is just a value piece. But I'm not excited to play it.
Yeah, the artwork's bizarre too. I kind of like it,
I was disappointed because it was like the first time they gave us another partner in a while that isn't partner with or limited to a background or whatever. It's literally an open partner, just like Malcolm and Breaches and all the others. And then it's this. And I'm like, If it had something to do with Discover or Descend, I think it would have been more powerful. But
if they'd have made it a 1/1, it'd have been more powerful, weirdly, because it can't do damage by itself, which is very frustrating. The list I think that I've seen, like I actually brewed a Malcolm Francisco list. Who knows if it's terrible? I'll try it at some point. I see Crom people talking about it just because it is the cheap commander to get your Fierce Guardianships, your Deflecting Swats, and your Mox Opals online early cheap. The other one, it's the I see people talk about it comboing with Agatha's Soul Cauldron and Walking Ballista. So you get Walking Ballista in the grave, you have Agatha's Soul Cauldron in play, you exile your Ballista, you put a 1/1 counter on Francisco, you ping somebody, you explore. You ping somebody, you explore until you hit a land, and you get the land in your hand. A way to fuel your grave for breach lines or other stuff, maybe.
Sure, that's cute, but is that really what we're trying to be doing? Like, I don't know. That's like the jank brewer part of me is like, yeah, this is cool. You could do weird shit with it, and the other part of me is just like, this is not something I want to do. It doesn't feel. I feel like he's just kind of a more casual. It's more of a casual setup for me. Like, you can go.
I think we have another 1 black and 1 partner it's an elf centric one. I can't even remember what the heck it's called. Here he goes. Yeah, so there's already a 1 black and 1 partner. There's already a cheap one if you want to do this, and it's a 1 mana or 1 black and 1 1/2 that can whenever another elf you control dies, you may pay 1 and you gain a life and draw a card or something. So it's another mid whatever. I'm not super excited about this one. Who knows? It'll be interesting to see what it does when people play it with Crom. If it was a 1/1, I'd be a lot more excited about it. If it could block, I'd be a lot more excited about it. If the artwork didn't give me a mini aneurysm trying to figure out what the hell was going on until I tilted my head, I'd be a lot more excited about it. But yeah, it's a partner. It's cool. I hope they keep printing the shit out of them because it'll make it interesting at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably smart that they've been keeping the newer printings to monocolor. As much as I would love to have more
Yeah.
2-color pairings, just to get away from having to play fucking Thrasios and Tymna all the time, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
At least they're exploring the space still, and that's all we can really ask for.
Up next, we have Tectonic Hazard, which is 1 red sorcery. Tectonic Hazard deals 1 damage to each opponent and each creature they control.
I like it because it's one-sided. It's not quite a pyroclasm, but it does the 1 damage. So if you're up against somebody that's making a bunch of 1/1 soldiers or something, that's great. This one also is kind of a popper card because there are several decks that do create tokens, and lots of them with 1 toughness. So this can be the board wipe that you need to get ahead, especially because it's asymmetrical. So you don't have to worry about killing your own stuff, which a lot of times with board wipes you do. So it's not bad, but it's a sorcery speed, so you're not going to be able to stop anybody that's like coming at you with that full board of 1/1. So
yeah, it's essentially end the festivities that doesn't hit your opponent's planeswalkers. I know Joey will play this in Surkara immediately. It's probably already in his list. And the other deck, I know at some point Kark and Sakashima used to use end the festivities as kind of a finisher because they could just copy the hell out of it after they create their gazillion red mana. I don't think they want another effect like that, but it exists. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's some decks we're not thinking of where they might want another one of these effects, but I'm probably only using it in Pauper myself.
Totally fair. Up next, we have Get Lost. What a great name. 1 white and 1 instant. Destroy target creature, enchantment, or planeswalker. Its controller creates 2 map tokens. So here we have another new mechanic, which are map tokens. They are tap 1, tap it, sacrifice this artifact. Target creature you control explores. Activate only as a sorcery. So where I see this being useful, I'm in Boros. I blow up your creature, your enchantment, your planeswalker, and I cast my dockside. You have 2 map tokens. My dockside's better now. I probably don't even have to do it the same turn because being able to crack map tokens only at sorcery speed means your opponent's probably not going to waste their mana cracking their map tokens unless they really need to do something or dig. So they're probably going to sit there.
So it kind of follows along the same pattern of like Path to Exile, where Path to Exile is 1 mana and Exile's the thing, which is better, but it also gives them a land. This is kind of the same thing in the sense that it's instead of Exile, and it does cost 1 more, instead of giving them a land right off the bat, it's giving them map tokens so they got the potential to get land. So in that case, it's not bad. I think this is fine in mono white decks that need more removal. I mean, it's cheaper than a crib swap. It's cheaper than some of the other stuff that's out there. It's cheaper than Generous Gift, and still hits most permanent types. So not awful. It is a rare, by the way, so it can't be played in other places. So,
why did I think it was a common?
If this was a common, I'd probably be playing this in some decks because they don't
His
have
lane would
the
be
swords
dancing
and whatnot. But yeah, it's gonna be good in decks that are like light or because white can be kind of light on removal for creatures if you're in mono white. Sometimes I remember with like Oswald and some of the mono white decks I made in the past, I dug really deep and found like old shit that's just bad cards that I was playing because it was like I just need more removal and I don't have it. So this kind of fills that slot. It's probably fine, especially if you're in metas that do play quite a few planeswalkers. I know in CDH we only have like a handful really that see a lot of play, and the rest of them are all kind of sporadic. But if you're in, if you got that Super Friends guy in your play group, maybe you play this.
Yeah, it's probably okay against like 5-color Sisay when they're doing their planeswalker weird ass lines that only they understand. Might be good there.
Or it stops. It stops. Yeah, it stops Tevesh and Jessica. It'll kill the 3-mana Teferi that's part of a kitten loop. So I mean, it does some stuff, and honestly, planeswalker removal isn't something we play a lot of, so this could be worth it for that.
Yeah, it gets you out of the Narset wheel lock bullshit too. So who knows?
Yeah,
it's honorable mention. It might see some play. It might not.
Yep.
It's certainly if you're playing Disenchant in your deck, you're looking at this and think, do I need to kill an artifact or not? Okay. Anyway. Up next, we have one that's pretty damn spicy, and this is one that almost made our list. And that is Altar of the Wretched. And it's another one. Good Lord, so many words. Wizards of the Coast, you could save a fortune in ink if you did less on all of your cards. 1 black and 2 colorless. When Altar of the Wretched enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice a non-token creature. If you do, draw X cards, then mill X cards, where X is that creature's power. It has craft with 1 or more creatures, 2 black and 2 colorless. I don't know if we've had craft yet, but craft is. I don't even have the keywords on here. Oh yeah, we have it. So
yep.
There you go. Craft with 1 or more creatures, so for 2 and 2 black. And it also has 2 colorless and a black mana. Return Altar of the Wretched from your graveyard to your hand. Notably, when it's crafted, it becomes Wretched Bone Mass. Its power and toughness are each equal to the total power of the exiled cards used to craft it. First strike, double strike, death touch, haste, hexproof, trample, blah 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 blah. You're probably never crafting
gets whatever
it unless I'm
keywords
insane.
that the cards was that you crafted it. It basically, like, if you, let's say you sack 2 creatures, one of them has flying, one has death touch, and they're both 2/2s. It becomes a 4/4 with flying and death touch, right?
There you go. Yep. So probably never happened because I think the deck that uses this in our format is either Dargo and Ikra, or Dargo and Timna, or Dargo and Tevish. Dargo Plus, where you have black and you have Dargo. This is maybe a card for you. You get the sacrifice effect of Dargo to draw 7 and mill 7, so you've refilled your hand. It's sacked your Dargo, so your Dargo count's you're probably still casting him for 1 red stupid mana. You can sack this as an artifact to lower your Dargo count if you need to, if you are below it. And you can recur it for a black and 2 colorless. So if you're doing, like, it fills your graveyard for breach loops, right? So milling 7, you got a whole bunch of cards in your graveyard now. You have 7 new cards in your hand. If you have your breach, if you have your Lion's Eye Diamond, you can crack your Lion's Eye Diamond, put all those in your grave, recur your Lion's Eye Diamond, recur this, cast, blah, blah, blah. Go through your whole deck and win.
I would argue you probably, maybe Dargo Silas, so you're in Grixis, just so you have access to Thoracle. So if you do get into a loop where you mill yourself with maybe, I don't know, Displacer Kitten or something, like you're flickering it or whatever, and then you've milled plus drawn and you've gotten to the point where you've gotten rid of your whole library, might as well have Thoracle there to win with.
Yeah, it could be.
But I don't know that Silas provides anything else to that game plan outside of colors. But again, if you're playing Dargo, you usually don't give a fuck who your commander is. It is there for
a lot of times that's true. Yeah, that's very true.
So
Timna's probably the one exception, or maybe Dargo Thrasios, because they have Thrasios. Damn that card. Yeah, so this is basically, if you're in non-blue, it's your Brain Freeze kind of card that refills your hand. If you're in blue, it can be your backup Brain Freeze. Dargo's the deck I see playing this. There's if you're on super fringe stuff, maybe Yargle and Multani, because 3 mana draw 18, mill 18 is kind of funny, but I don't know if anybody plays that deck other than a couple of my friends. So who knows?
Yeah, it's probably got some applications that we're not thinking about as well, but just at face value and how we've thought about it to this point, it seems like probably the best place for it. I'm not personally excited about it. I don't see a place where I'm going to play it, but it's a thing that does a thing. So
I stumbled across this when I was thinking about building a deck for this set specifically. There's a card we're not talking about, the Ancient one. It's like a 2 mana 8/8 that does stuff. I was thinking about playing this and that because 3 mana draw 8 is okay. Anyway, that, and we have one more honorable mention. It is Bloodletter of Aklazotz. Hope I said that right. Sorry if I didn't. 3 black and 1, 2/4 Vampire Demon. It's flying. If an opponent would lose life during your turn, they lose twice that much life instead. So it's effectively a 4 mana 4/4 flying Vampire Demon, kind of by itself.
It essentially gives anything double strike to some extent, because they lose a life, then they lose it again. So it is kind of an enabler for any sort of combat focused deck. Again, this could probably slot into Kalia because it's going to come in for free, and then it's going to hit, and plus Kalia hitting, and then, it's kind of like a wound reflection thing too. So in that regard, if you're doing, it doesn't have to be combat damage. They just have to lose life, and damage is loss of life, as is any pinging effects. So if you are on that guy we talked about a little bit ago, and they do something and they take 2, and this guy's on the field, they're going to take 2 more. So
if you have some kind of a black-red, if you have black-red and you have this and Heartless Hidetsugo or whatever the hell that card is, where you tap it and your opponents lose half their life, there you are. Everybody does, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, it's got potential. We didn't include it in our top 10. It was close, but it doesn't currently really have a home that we could think of where it's a slam dunk fit. So that's why it's just on the outside looking in.
Maybe that Mogus deck that Rev plays, it could probably see, because he does play that Wound Reflection Demon already. So I mean, it's another piece for it. But yeah, it's not It's not a staple, so we didn't really. Not that everything on our list is going to be a staple anyway, but it was just kind of on the outside looking in a little bit, I think.
Yep, I think in call, yeah, I think I would play Bonehorde, Drakusar, then this, but I could be wrong there too.
Yeah. I agree with you.
Cool. Well, that's it on the honorable mentions. Now we get to the meat and potatoes.
So yeah, once again, no particular order. This number 10 isn't necessarily the best or the worst card, although I think the card we put in the top slot probably is the best card in the set. At least I'm leaning towards that, but
I'm kind of leaning that way as well. Well, who knows? I've heard a lot of different opinions on that. Even bizarre. Anyway,
yep.
Number 10, is it Zoyoa? Is that how you say this?
That's how I say it.
Close enough. Zoyoa's Justice. 1 red and 1 instant. The owner of target artifact or creature with mana value 1 or greater shuffles it into their library. Then that player discovers X, where X is its mana value, which means they exile cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card with that mana value or less. They cast it without paying its mana cost or put it into their hand. They put the rest on the bottom in random order. So it's the new Cascade mechanic. Probably stronger than Cascade, weirdly.
It's better than Cascade for sure.
Yeah, but you're not playing this for the Cascade ability. Probably you're playing it because it's 1 red and 1 instant. Get something gone. It's going to remove whatever you target.
Warp. Yeah, It's a Chaos Warp for 1 less mana, and yeah, they're going to get something back, but it's not. It's more specific because it's just an artifact, so it's not Chaos Warp where you warp somebody's Elish Nord and then they get something else that's equally terrifying. You're like, fuck. If you go and use this on somebody's The One Ring and they've been exploiting that, and you're just like, get it the fuck out of here. Then they flip into Mox Amber. Like, who gives a shit, you know? So in this case, pretty okay.
Yeah, just the one. It's very similar to Chaos Warp at 1 cheaper.
It's equal in mana value to Wild Magic Surge, but instead of 2 red pips, it's only 1. So that is kind of Wild Magic Surge was kind of like the better Chaos Warp, and I heard people talk about playing it a little bit. Not like it became a staple, but it was just there as a kind of better version. I think this is a slightly incrementally better version, although you could probably play both if you're in like mono red, need that little extra bit of removal. Most mono red decks though are super fast combo and don't give a shit about removing your stuff, so in that regard, it probably sees more play in stuff that's like maybe Grixis or something else that just needs that bit of artifact removal.
Yep, I see this as being played in basically Rionia loves this card. Magda might play this, just removal for 2, and Godo probably plays this because it can kill a Dranith Magistrate, it can kill a Torpor Orb. What more does any little boy need, right? So,
yep.
But yeah, I think this one will see some play, especially super low color red decks will definitely take a look at this. So, up next we have kind of in a similar vein, we have Bitter Triumph, 1 black and 1, an instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card or pay 3 life. So it's an or. Destroy target creature or planeswalker.
Yeah, so I mean, just as we said earlier, having that modality to hit a planeswalker can be okay. There isn't a fuck ton of them in the format, but there's enough that could be something you'd want to remove rather than having to try and hit it enough times to kill it. Especially if it's one of those dumb ones like an Oko or something that's got a +2 and you're just like, fuck, can't get rid of this guy. So yeah, I mean, it reminded me, my initial thought was, oh, it's Feed the Swarm, or like a different version of Feed the Swarm, essentially, because Feed the Swarm is like lose life, and it's only creature and enchantment. So for a mono black deck, it was like, oh, this is another modal way to do a thing. But then it also is an instant, so that kind of makes it a little bit better. But it is still essentially along those same sort of lines. And if you're already in a mono black deck that's playing Feed the Swarm, you're probably going to play this too, like, you know, the Cricks of the world and whatnot. And you know, 3 life isn't that terrible to pay. I guess for Crick, it's more like what? How many life per pip when you
2.
use a Crick? 2. So in that it's probably 5 life, but you know, it's 1 mana, 5 life, blow up a thing that's hurting you. That's not.
Yeah, if Crom's coming your way or something, it's good to get rid of it. It has the unique ability to have its downside be an upside. So as an additional cost to cast it, you may pay life or you may discard a card. There are worlds where a discard's an upside. You might want to dump your World Gorger, your Abdel Adrian, your Crick, your Villas, your Razakath into the grave, yep. Your World Gorger Dragon, whatever, into the grave, and then reanimate the damn thing. So the downside becomes an upside on this card.
Well, I'm like for example, I'm actually adding this to the considering of my Evelyn list as we speak, because I'm already running Falcon Wrath Pit Fighter and Insolent Neonate for that very reason. If Gorger ends up in my hand and I need to get rid of it, these are an easy way to get rid of it. So having that extra piece that also is blowing up another creature, that's pretty fucking good. And when you look at it through that vein, it's one of the better removal spells in the format for black.
Yeah, hell yeah. And as it shifts more and more to a creature-centric format, killing creatures at a low mana cost at instant speed is a premium. So this is great. Yeah, I think this will see some play.
It's definitely going to see some play.
Cool. We have next.
Brass's Tunnel Grinder. Oof, what a name.
Good Lord, more texts. Come on. All right, here we go. You want to read it or you want me to?
I got it. All right, yes. So this is a for 2 and a red. It's a legendary artifact, which legendary could matter if you're in a deck that cares about that and can tutor up legendary stuff, whatever. There is what is that? Search for Glory. If you're in that kind of Boros deck or whatever, this can be tutored up because it's legendary.
You can find it.
Yeah, there's a lot of decks that like that. And then yeah, for Sisay, it's also giving the color identity, so that helps. So it says when it ETBs, you discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards plus 1. So this is very much like there's an MDFC that did this. There's that Boros card, like something Greeting that had what's the Planeswalker that died? Oh my God, Gideon. He was on Heartfelt Redemption or something. It's essentially the same idea. You discard and then you draw that many plus 1. So that kind of effect has been there a lot. And even if that was all this was, it's actually not a terrible thing because it's just another wheel. And it's tutorable
Self-wheel.
With certain,
you're not.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not terrible. But then it also has at the beginning of your end step, if you descended this turn, which descend means any permanent went into your graveyard from anywhere, you get to put a counter on it. And then if there are 3 or more of those counters, you remove those and transform it. Then once you transform it, similar to the first Ixalan set, there are a few of these cards that transform into legendary lands. Strangely enough, most of them are kind of weird, and I don't really like the land side, but this is one of the ones where the land side is pretty good. So it can tap for a red, which is fine. Oh, sorry, I guess it becomes Tekatlan, the Searing Rift. It's a cave, which there are some mechanics in this set that care about caves, but I don't think we're going to be talking about any of those. May become relevant at some point in the future. But yeah, again, you can add a red, and then whenever you cast a permanent spell using mana produced by it, so if you tap this for mana to cast a permanent, you get to discover X, where X is the spell's mana value. So let's say you drop, Atali for 5 mana, and you used this to cast it. You can now discover where X equals 5 and go from there. So at that point, you're then exiling cards until you get to a card with the same or less mana value. You get to cast it for free. So yeah, I mean, just on the front side alone, I think it's pretty good. Being able to tutor it and then, do the thing. Descending is not hard. You literally just need like anything to go to your grave that's a permanent. So it can't be treasure tokens or map tokens or whatever. But it's still
a fucking fetch land will get you there. There you go.
Exactly.
So yeah, the descend part of it. I mean, if it gets to that, you can play it in some kind of a stacks shell where you're getting to 3 turns is not hard to do. The big thing I like about this and why I think is landing and I put it on the list eventually is if you do some bullshit with Displacer Kitten, you can blink this. So Wheel of Fortune-ish, Self-Wheel of Fortune, selective Self-Wheel of Fortune even, because you can choose what to discard.
Yeah, if you're
on use.
Like, well, breach lines especially too. Like if you can sack this and recur it through a breach, or like you said, flicker it, you can just go through until you either find your breach and then cast it, or whatever the case may be, and then you just continue to go on with it. It enables quite a bit of stuff.
Dargo decks might play this. Hell, it's red and it's an artifact they can sack to their Dargo account. Shit.
Yep. And I mean, discarding cards again is not necessarily bad if you're in a breach deck. Even if you're not in a breach deck, just having the card selection can be pretty good. Like Boros decks that aren't on breach might still want to play this. I think Sisay probably plays this because of the tutor ability, and then just to be able to swap out the shitty cards that are in her hand for something better. It's probably even could go into like Queen Kayla, because it is a 3-drop that can trigger off of her, but then also gives you more cards to play around with. So it's going to see some play, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I like that. I didn't think about it. In your Queen Kayla deck, it's an interesting piece to discard, draw a bunch, and then discard whatever you didn't like and draw some new shit.
Yep.
I like it. Cool. Up. up next, we have one of the interesting pieces of this set. It is Malcolm Alluring Scoundrel. And it is 1 blue and 1 for a 2/1 legendary creature, Siren Pirate. It has flash, it has flying, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, put a chorus counter on it, draw a card, then discard a card, so you loot. If there are 4 or more chorus counters on it, you may cast the discarded card without paying its mana cost.
So when I initially looked at this, I was like, okay, I don't like mono blue, but it could still be a good mono blue commander. I think somebody's playing it going into our Ixalan pod next week.
Did Rev brew it or Joey? Somebody brewed it.
I think somebody did. And prior to them brewing it, I was kind of like, I don't know what you do with this. And they pointed out, well, what about, discarding an Into the Infinite and then just casting it for free? And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fucking busted. That could make this deck something. And getting to those types of cards usually isn't too terrible because of the tutor abilities in blue. But I think it could also be a 99 card just to have some kind of weird value, but probably more likely a commander. I think that he's more powerful than the Breaches by a mile. Just having flash, so you can flash him in whenever you want on somebody's end step, so you have him for your next turn, and then you get to swing, and then you get to do the counter thing. You get to loot. It's repeatable loot every turn. And then, once you get to the 4 counters, it doesn't matter if there's more, so you just keep doing it every turn. You got the loot, and then once you've got the 4, you can start discarding stuff and casting it for free, which is just crazy value. The one main issue I think, though, is that mono blue is going to be running a lot of instants and stuff that's like removal that you're not going to want to cast for free. So you may end up running into that thing where you have to kind of build it a particular way so that you're not constantly flipping into, going to discard and all you have in your hand is interaction. You can't use any of it right now. So why bother? And then you're just discarding stuff and not getting the value. So as much as you want to jam probably every counterspell you can, you probably also maybe want to think about being a little more selective with the other stuff, but I digress.
They have printed stuff in recent sets like Lorien Revealed, which helps with that a little bit. If you discard it, draw 3 for free is pretty amazing. But the getting to the 4 counters is going to be really damn difficult if you're not proliferating. Thankfully, there's enough little cheap cantrips and stuff that you can proliferate. So I think getting to the 4 counters isn't going to take 4 combat steps. It's probably going to take 2. And then it's real. It's going to be a target. It's going to get shot down with Bowmasters. It's got a 1 ass end on it, which is very, very unfortunate. Why they didn't make the 2/2.
Well, and then also the whole okay, my protection is I bounce into my hand. Well, now it lost all of its counters, and you got to start over.
Right. So it's got nerfed for that reason. It is a discard outlet. So if you're in Grixis or something where you're reanimating your bullshit, this is a discard outlet.
Or again, if you're in a Malcolm Breaches deck and you are doing a little more thematically pirate stuff, this can slot right in there, I suppose.
Yeah, totally. With the fire that hits, fills your cards engraved for breach lines. We sound like a broken record saying that, but it is true. It does that. I think it's actually going to see a lot of play at 99 is more than a commander. I could be wrong. We'll find out. But it's going up against a Fairy Mastermind. It's going up against Ledger Shredder. So the Fairy Mastermind in this both have flash. Ledger Shredder doesn't, but it's a lot bigger butt and maybe more repeatable card draw. So you probably play this
gets
over
big and can become a threat.
Yeah, so you're probably playing this if the pirate matters, that's huge. That's a big boon for playing this. If you're wanting to play more of a control shell where the flash matters, you want to keep man open for all your interaction at all times. I might give this a whirl in Talion. That's a very pseudo control shell that I play that I love, and you want to keep your man open for your options open, and slamming this in is probably more beneficial than my Ledger Shredder that I think I had on my last list. So I might try it in something like that. But yeah, I think its card's good. I think it'll see some play. A 2-mana 2/1 flyer with flash that loots when it freaking deals combat damage, and we're arguing whether this card's good or not in 2023. Here we are, right?
There were definitely points in time where I think that would have been enough, and now we're like, it's not enough.
Yeah, well, if it didn't have a 1 ass end, Orcus Bowmaster would. If that card didn't exist, it'd be a lot better. Lot better.
I guess we can't live our life based off of Orcish Bowmaster, right? You gotta play
you just counter it. You just counter it, and then they can't get it. There you go.
Yep.
All right, what do we have? This one. Okay, this one is going to be a hot take, and I don't care what anybody says. Here we are. Tashana's Tidebender. 1 blue and 2 colorless for a 3/2 Merfolk Wizard. It has flash. It has a novel that goes along with it, and here it is. When Tishana's Tidebender enters the battlefield, counter up to 1 target activated or triggered ability. So you have Stifle. If an ability of an artifact, creature, or planeswalker is countered this way, that permanent loses all abilities for as long as Tishana's Tidebender remains on the battlefield, which is Pithing Needle. Mana abilities can't be targeted. So you have a 3 mana, 3/2 Stifle, Pithing Needle on a body.
I mean, it having flash for 3 mana is kind of expensive to do the Pithing Needle thing, but just imagine dropping this on somebody's Tevesh or somebody's Thrasios or even Timna. Just any of those that have an activated or triggered ability, it now all of a sudden is just a body. Doesn't have those abilities. It shuts off Kinnan. It shuts off all kinds of very powerful cards. This is not meta warping, but because Pithing Needle and other cards like it already exist. But it being on a body, it being a Merfolk could be relevant as well, depending on what you're playing. Just having a Stifle that's good is what I like about it, because Stifle, we just don't play it because it's like, yes, it can do very powerful things, but it's so situational. It takes up a slot in your list that you could just put something else there. This goes in, and it's a body, it's flash. It could be flash in to block a 1/1. It's got a lot of upside. I don't see why this wouldn't get played.
Stopping Dockside, stopping Thassa's Oracle, win cons. And on a creature, by the way, which you can also cast it through somebody's fucking sacked Ranger Captain of Eos. Yep. I still have creatures I can cast. Being able to stop those is pretty okay. Like you said, Stifle exists already, but Stifle that you can cast through a Ranger Captain crack doesn't, and here it is. But also, like, they activate their One Ring, you cast this thing, you nerf that draw, and their One Ring is a 4 mana indestructible piece of shit that slowly kills them. Great. They activate Kinnan, like you said, Tivit. This they attack. Tivit's trigger goes on the stack. You flash this in, it gets around Ward, and Tivit's now a 6/6 flying nothing. It's a 6/6 flying beater, which, I mean, that's still scary, but it's a hell of a lot less scary.
It's probably going to beat you down, too, because you did it. But,
sure, you're definitely getting punched with Tivit until this is gone. But where I really like this, I mean, think about some of the biggest boogeymen in the format. Your Tivits, your Nagilas, your Atraxas. They flash this in and stifle their Atraxa ETB trigger. Your Godo, Godo is not really
costs so much. Ugh.
You're right. You stop Magda with this thing. They activate Magda, sack and 5 treasures, and boom, your Magda is now a 2/1 dwarf. Congrats. With no more Anthem even. I mean, it's expensive at 3 mana. The body might have to be relevant for you want to play it, but maybe not. I mean, a 3/2 that has that much versatility is pretty strong. I don't know. Well, I'm going to try it.
You're not going to be attacking with it because you want to keep its ability on the thing as long as possible. Like, so it is there specifically to host somebody and keep it on the board. But it's a 3/2 blocker. So like I said, it can block 1/1s all day long. And I mean, if it comes down to it, it can trade with some bigger creatures that have 3 bucks.
Yeah, it can trade with an Nagila. I could see it being an attacker in a deck that might try it. That's fallen out of favor. The Timna and Timna Thrasios, good lord. Timna Thrasios might play this card and try it out as another, they're holding up 4 mana to activate Thrasios. They can pay 3 mana to cast this instead. And then the 3/2 body with Timna is super relevant. So I don't know. I think this card's really good. I think if it was just a Stifle, it would be crap. Because it stays there and it removes those texts, and as long as it's on the battlefield, I think it makes it good. Your Talion triggers on the stack. I flash this in. Talion's a 3/4 flyer with no more text. Your Orcish Bowmaster triggers on the stack. I flash this in. Not only do you not get your Orc Army trigger, you don't get your damage. Your Orc Army's a 1/1 that does nothing. I mean, or your Bowmaster, sorry. I think this card's good. I think people are sleeping on it. I hear a lot of people saying this card's trash. It's too expensive, blah, blah, blah. Maybe time will prove them right. I don't know. But I am going to try it because I think it's decent.
Well, yeah. Well, the thing is that, like, for the same reason why I thought Scheming Fence was good and I was surprised how many people slept on it, it's the same thing, but I think it costs 1 less, but it doesn't have
blue
flash. Yeah, but I mean, it's still, this is blue too, so if you're playing that in a blue-white deck, this is another piece that does the same thing, and in both cases, in the case of the fence, it steals the ability, but it still turns it off for them. So
Yep.
you can
And
hit.
in the case of this can shut down Thassa's Oracle and Dockside that Scheming Fence can't. So upside on both.
So yeah, I think that they're both playable if you're in a kind of control list that's using those
Yeah,
types of
especially
effects.
now as many One Rings as exist. I think they're both very playable. But yeah, I mean, imagine somebody plays Hulk and they sack their Hulk and you flash this in and stifle the Hulk trigger. You know, and my big selling point on this, honestly, is it's the same thing. I've been coming around to all the channel cards that touch the Spirit Realm and things like that. Cards that I can cast through a Silence, through a Grand Abolisher, or through a Ranger Captain of Eos Crack, and that's where this fits. Makes it so much more powerful for me. I mean, how many times, Lane, have you lost a game because someone cracked their Ranger Captain, then they Thassa's Oracle Demonic Consultation because they can go uncontested, and you're like, eat it. So
yeah, this does do that. I think it's very worthwhile. I missed it initially going through. I didn't even see it. You put it on the list, and then when I read it, I was like, holy shit, pretty good.
Yeah, I initially thought it was garbage because I misread it and didn't realize it shut off the ability for as long as it's on the battlefield. I was just like, it's a stifle on a body. It's terrible. Turning it into a vanilla whatever, pretty damn good.
Yep. I mean, that's why people play Reprobation and other enchantment auras that do the same thing. I mean, if you can shut off somebody's win condition, essentially, or like their value engine just by playing a 3-mana card, like, why wouldn't you?
Right. I mean, anything I can cast behind a Ranger Captain crack, I'm all on right now because there's so many of that type of effect going on that the more ways I have to fight through that, the better. So
agreed. What's the next one?
Up next, we have Charismatic Conqueror. 1 white and 1 for a 2/2 vampire soldier. It has vigilance, and whenever an artifact or creature enters the battlefield untapped and under an opponent's control, they may tap that permanent. If they don't, you create a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink.
So this hoses, it's a really weird, it doesn't read like it, but it's a really weird stacks piece. And you pointed this out that it hoses stuff like Kiki Jiki or Rionia or whatever. Anything, Twin Flame, Dualcaster.
Oh, yeah.
Anything that is a win con that says, I make infinite tokens that have haste and I'm going to swing and kill you. This says you can't, because if you do not tap them, then I get 1/1s that can block all the shit you're going to send at me. So they can make as many infinite things as they want, and we're going to get, and then, we're going to block all those things and have infinite life essentially on top of it. It's going to stop them from being able to kill us, for sure. Even better, like, obviously they may have some kind of removal or whatever, and then it doesn't work, but being able to have this out and stop that as another option is pretty good. I like the hate bears that have that kind of design where they just stop this one weird thing, but like sometimes it's needed. And I play a lot of decks that win with Kiki Jiki lines, so this is anti-tech for me specifically.
For me, the big piece on this, you're going to get incremental little dorks, right? They're going to play their Mana Vault, and they're sure as hell not going to want to have it come into play tapped. You get a one with lifelink. They're going to play their Lotus Petal.
Oh yeah, I forgot it was artifacts as well.
Lotus. Yeah, their Jeweled Lotus. Their whatever.
So
their Dockside comes into play. Yeah, their Dockside comes into play. Yes, they're going to get 1,000,000 treasures. They might win that turn, but if they don't, you're going to get a shitload of vampires with lifelink, and that's pretty scary. When the card that, or the deck that I have specifically in mind for this card is Winota. It's a vampire soldier. There's no human word on this anywhere, so it's going to trigger Winota when it attacks with vigilance, and it makes vampires, not humans. So all the little things it makes are going to trigger Winota when it attacks.
Yeah. I mean, that's an escalating board. That's almost win more with Winota, but like it's also doing exactly what you want it to do. And then being able to hose any opposing players when attempts that do make infinite tokens just makes it that much better. Yeah, I do like that it's blind because I play blind obedient. It's a lot. It's a very good card to stop treasures and other things that come in. So yeah, having that on a creature, it's the same exact cost. I mean, it doesn't have the extort clause, but it's also a 2/2 with vigilance. I mean, you can use this in Timna deck and swing with it without having to lose a blocker. So yeah, lot
it'll make little dorks for your Timna to swing with. Yeah, I mean, I think the little token dork production, it's going to be super relevant in a deck that can take advantage of it. And Winota is the number one deck that I can think of that's going to take advantage of that. Maybe Jetmir or something where the extra bodies are going to get you to that ultimate anthem that Jetmir does, whatever the hell it does when you get 1 billion creatures and wins. This is going to create tokens. You're not going to get a 2-mana 2/2 and your opponent's going to suddenly be like, well, all my shit's going to come into play tap, so you don't get 1/1s. They aren't going to care. They're going to give you 1/1s. So you're going to get bodies from this, right? So if you can turn those bodies into huge card advantage right away, scary, right? And if you can't, then great. If you slow them down for 2 mana, I'm beyond happy. So
I think this kind of has the same feel to it's completely different card, but for this set, this is kind of like the Lotho, where I totally overlooked it, and then it turned out to be really good. In this case, I recognize it as being good right away. I just missed it when I was looking through the cards. Because at face value with a quick skim, it doesn't sound that impressive. But then when you start thinking about it, it actually has quite a lot. But it kind of reminds me of Lotho in that sense that, like, you're going to put this on the board, you're going to get some value out of it, and sometimes creatures coming into play has some benefit for you. Like if you have like those New Capenna cards with like Alliance or whatever it is, where like if a creature enters the battlefield, you get XYZ thing. There were some of those types of cards where it was like if 2 creatures entered the battlefield this turn, you draw a card. Or like the first, I can't remember, it was a mono white or a Selesnya card. It was like when you, the first time a creature comes into play, you scry one, and then if it's the second time this is triggered, you draw a card. So like stuff like that, you're going to get those kinds of triggers. Not that you're going to necessarily have that, but just as an example, there's stuff that having extra bodies makes sense for. And then also if you're doing anything with like the altars, you can sack these creatures to mill people, you can sack them for mana. There's a lot of different applications for little shitty tokens that can be used to do bigger and better things.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you have some kind of, if you're in like a black-white with Diabolic Edict or Diabolic or Beseech the Mirror, there's your
Diabolic
token.
Intent.
If you're, Diabolic Intent, that's the one. Beseech the Mirror. If you're in green and you have a Guy's Cradle, hey, this is going to probably make some dorks to make that thing ramp up pretty damn quick. I mean, yeah, it's going to, it's a pseudo weird little stacks piece with upside. I think if you can play it and take advantage of the little bodies, if it's not making you an army, if it's making you 2 to 3 little creatures, if you can take those and make an advantage out of them and turn the corner really quick with them, I think this card's going to be pretty damn good.
I agree. I think it will see play in a lot of decks, especially because white, if you're playing white, you like these kinds of effects usually. You're usually playing something that's got kind of a stacksy build to it, unless white is really just a splash in your deck. Yeah,
an army in a bottle, little hate bear. So I know that there's talk of there's a 1 red and 1 white and 1 creature in this set that can make tokens and combat and stuff. I don't remember exactly what it does or what it's called, but I've heard talk of people talking about that for Winota. To me, this is way better. It comes down sooner as a 2-drop. It actually has a relevant ability in stopping some decks win cons, which is super good. And it's just going to come down quicker. So anyway.
Cool. So
all right. Up next, we have Kite Sail Larcenist. 1 blue and 2 for a 2/3 human pirate. It has flying and ward 1, which your opponents will almost always forget about. When it enters the battlefield, for each player, choose up to 1 target artifact or creature that player controls. For as long as it remains on the battlefield, the chosen permanents become treasure artifacts with tap it, sack it, add a mana of any color, and lose all other abilities.
So it's essentially a Grasp of Fate in blue. It's the same mana cost, but Grasp of Fate's 2 white and 1, but same 3 mana cost. It doesn't have flash, so you don't have like that ability to like gotcha people with it. But if they already have stuff out, it says for each player, right? Yeah. So I mean, you can also turn somebody gives you a map, you can turn it into a clue, and then into a treasure, and then sack it for your own benefit, I suppose. It also kind of buffs your dock side if you choose creatures on their field, because now creatures are artifacts. So now you're getting 3 more on your dock side, so that's not terrible. A 2/3 flyer is not terrible. Like it's
pirate
got
and human, both relevant. I like the idea you could turn your own dockside into a treasure to sack itself and then recur it with something. So that's pretty busted. I like that. I never thought about that before, buddy. I like that. So
like I said, you're turning a useless token, like one of those 1/1 vampires we were just talking about. You turn that into a treasure, sack it, and you got mana. Like that seems like an upgrade. So it can do a lot. It is up to, so you don't have to choose your own thing.
Yeah, I mean, being able to lock up your opponent's commanders that they have to then sack them to then recast them, maybe it's a thing. If they blow their wad with their Jeweled Lotus and etc. to jam their Crom out, and you jam this thing out, and now Crom's a treasure. It seems pretty okay.
if you were able to turn 3 of their commanders into that too, like,
Yeah.
because they don't get eggs, they're not really exiled underneath it. They just turn into treasures. So it's like they're only unlocked once this thing leaves, but they may just choose to sacrifice just to have the treasure, and then they recast from their command zone, whatever the case may be. But it's just, I think it's a really good piece of removal, especially because blue doesn't have a lot of removal when it comes to like this. It's usually bounce it back to their hand and then they get the value back from casting it or whatever the case is. In this case, it's taking away any value that thing is providing. So
yeah, being a pirate, like you said, is more and more relevant with like the Malcolm decks of the world. Having Ward 1 is super relevant. They're gonna forget, they're gonna tap wrong, and they're not gonna have the extra mana to pay for their swords that they target on this. But also just it's being able to get rid of artifacts in blue. I mean, what's your other options, like resculpt? So does this replace resculpt maybe, because you can do multiple people? Maybe, I don't know. It's pretty okay. I think it'll see some play. If it was not a human,
it doesn't give them a 4/4, so it is definitely better than resculpt. It just outside of it doesn't have flash, so you have to
right. I mean, 3 versus 2, but being able to hit multiple players stuff is pretty good. Yeah, I mean, I think this card's interesting.
Also, it's doing the pithing needle thing where you hit their Thrasios, their Dargo, their thing. They have no activated ability, so like Dargo doesn't care as much. He's just like, okay, I sack, I float the mana, I use this, that, and the other thing to recast Dargo. So that's probably a bad example, but otherwise, you're turning their Tymnas, the Thrasioses, the Kroms, the whatever into treasures, and they lose all their abilities. So
you can target their stupid One Ring, and now their One Ring's one treasure, which is pretty damn good. So
the one treasure.
I like this card.
I like it
literally. What do we have next? This card. Now this card is a slam dunk in quite a few decks, I think. We have Dauntless Dismantler. Dauntless Dismantler. 1 white and 1 for a human artificer. Artificer? Anyway, whatever. Yeah. It's a 1/4, so it's a huge butt. Artifacts your opponent control enter the battlefield tapped. So and it also has another ability of X and a white mana. Sacrifice it. Destroy each artifact with mana value of X.
So the second line of text, not as relevant, probably not going to see play too often, but there are going to be those days where you're like, I have this down, and then the Urza has now played 3 orbs, and I just want them gone, and let's just get rid of them. And then you sack this guy, and you get your little mini wipe, and that's cool that it has it. It's also a 4-butt, so like it's not dying to bolts or braids, so that's powerful enough by itself. There's very few cards that see CDH play that hit for 4.
Right.
They exist, but they're not played very often. And then just having the dockside artifacts and anything else, the mana vaults, the grim monoliths, the things that people don't want to enter tapped, and they'll forget this is here and they'll play them anyway. So
even the One Ring, if it enters tapped, they're drawing less cards. That's good.
Yeah, it's not like the most powerful effect we've ever seen. There's other cards that do the same thing, but it's another human. It's another mono white hate bear.
Having legs is nice for your decks that care about that. Tymnas of the world, this can certainly attack. It's probably not going to get blocked and killed. If it gets blocked, then something else probably got through. I see the second ability, the 1 white and XX, which is probably just going to be 1 white. Destroy everything with value X. Somebody plays their dockside, all their crap comes into play tapped. Before they go to their next turn, you're like, uh-oh, they are going to have all their stuff. I pay 1 white mana and wipe their treasures, and everybody else's treasures is pretty good. Also, if I have there you go, gets rid of all their clues and crap. If someone plays a dockside and there's a whole bunch of 0-drop rocks on the battlefield, I can pay 1, sack this, their treasures will come in untapped, but I might, remove 6, 8, 10, who knows, 0 drops, honestly, and make their treasure, their dockside significantly worse. So, and it does have
even
it can
if
scale.
You have to pay the 3 that you're hitting anything that's 1. There's a lot of 1-drop artifacts also, if that happens to be what's out there. Like,
if I need to kill Pithing Needle,
Soul Rings, or
Cage, or Soul Ring, so it's pretty good. I hear a lot of people compare it to Blind Obedience and saying it's a better Blind Obedience, and I disagree wholeheartedly with them.
The other card is Blind Obedience more so than this is, I think.
Yeah, but with this one, it's a creature, not enchantment, so it won't add to the dockside count. Great, even though their stuff will come into play tapped. Dockside or the Blind Obedience has the ability to stop Kiki Jiki and Dualcaster wins, which we both talked about. Those exist. They still are very much a thing in the format. It can delay blockers, so your creatures of your opponents coming into play tapped is good if they have haste. If they're Crom, they're not Crom batting you. If they're, whatever they are, they don't have haste. Also, you can loop with Bomberman and LED. You can kill everybody with the extort on Blind Obedience. I've certainly done that in games. That's actually a major win con in a couple of my decks. This can't do that, obviously. This does dodge, your non-creature removal. So your Bosejus, Swan Songs, things like that. It can't be countered by those or destroyed by those. So I think this card will see a shitload of play, but I don't know that it's as good as Blind Obedience. It's similar and it's different.
So, I mean, if you're in a deck that cares about enchantments like a Sithis, you play Blind Obedience over this. If you're in a deck like Winota or whoever that cares about, this could be a human that gets triggered off and comes in, then this goes in that kind of deck, or Kayla, or any other Boros Staxy kind of list or even a deck that just cares about humans, that's Hate Bears. There's Orzhov decks that play Blind Obedience and stuff too. This may just be an additional version, because Blind Obedience really only had, up until recently, it was the only card that did that, where it made both those things. Like, there was the Authority of the Consuls, but that only hit creatures. Blind Obedience hits both. This only hits artifacts. With the 3 of those, you got the trifecta. Then add in our vampire guy, and if you're in mono white, you got 4 pieces that just basically say, you can't do X, Y, Z thing. And when you get those kinds of boards, you win a lot of games. So
yeah, it stacks them up, slow them down, and punch through for the win. So, and 1 white and 1 super castable. That's very nice too.
And it's an uncommon, so it's not like something that's going to be hard to find. It's not going to be expensive.
Right.
It's showing right now a Card Kingdom for 50 cents.
There you go. I'll be curious if Tim the Crom decks try this. I don't know if they're on Blind Obedience right now currently. And if they're not on Blind Obedience, they're probably not going to play this. But the body for Tim.
But a lot of cards, like when Drannith got printed, a lot of decks that didn't necessarily play stacks still slam him in, because it's like, why wouldn't you? And this kind of feels like that kind of card. It's not as powerful as Drannith, obviously, but it's still hosing a significant portion of the format, and I think that is good enough.
Yeah, when one of the most powerful cards is Dockside, anything that stops it or slows it down is worth considering, especially at 2 mana. So,
indeed.
Up next, we have Roaming Throne. Hate the artwork, love the card. That's just me. 4 mana
looks like
for
Legos.
It does. It totally does. And then the other set, the special artwork looks like something straight out of Zelda or something. Anyway, 4 mana, 4/4 artifact creature golem, probably. It's got Ward 2. I said probably because as Roaming Throne enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Roaming Throne is the chosen type in addition to its other types. It's a golem plus. And if a triggered ability of another creature you control of the chosen type triggers, it triggers an additional time.
So this is obviously immediately a Magda card, because it's the artifact dwarf that you need.
My God, it's Magda's best friend.
And it doubles Magda triggers, so it just does everything. Having Ward 2 on a 4/4 body is busted. It also, notably, because it can be an additional creature type, it can be slotted into anything else that has, pirate, this, that, the other thing. It can double up Malcolm triggers, it can double up whoever, whatever you have that, your Adelines or whatever, like you can name human or soldier or whatever, and it does that. So, it can be used in a number of ways. It's colorless, so it's literally can slot into any deck. And then on top of that, there's actually some decks that might even care that it's a golem, like the Each Techic, and there's a couple other, that's the one I can think of the most. It's a partner, but it has the whole cares about golems thing, so that's probably the only one that cares about golems that's out there. But I want to say there's at least one other commander that cares about golems, but anyhow, probably not going there. But yeah, it's 4 mana, which kind of is expensive, but it's 4 generic, so I mean, it's a Soul Ring and a Mana Crypt, and that's it. So you can get this out super early, name Dwarf, and just go ham with Magda.
Oh my God.
And like I said, a lot of other decks too.
Yeah, it's your artifact dwarf with Ward, and it's your Academy Manufacturer or your Zorn already. And so this Magda and Clock of Omens, and you have Infinite Treasures and Infinite Mana.
So it's
3. I think it's red and 2. It's red and 2. I think they're both 3. But this being your artifact dwarf too, holy hell! And Ward 2 stuck to it, so good. Yeah, this card, Magda's best friend. Magda loved this card. Like the second it came out, this is a Magda card. Another deck that I'm slotting it in is Rionia. It's pretty fire. Name human. I think she's a human wizard, whatever the hell she is. Name one of those, and you get. I think wizard is the creature type. I don't know. I'd have to look. No, it's human. I would name human because you can also double up enter the battlefield triggers like your Imperial Recruiter or whatever. But anyway, Rionia doubles her triggers. Another deck that I think I made a note on this. Maybe Derevi. It's like a wizard. Double the tap or untap triggers of Derevi.
Sure.
Maybe Joyra, the Weatherlight one, that whenever you cast a historic spell or artifact or whatever the hell it is, ETBs, draw cards. Maybe this, because it double draws, double hold up. A crazy idea I had that I'm running past my friend that plays the deck. Maybe I'm insane, probably, but what about like Anya Falconwrath? The tap, discard a card, draw a card. If you discard a card with Madness, you untap her. If you name Vampire, you would have 2 untap triggers. So I think you could untap, tap or discard, blah, 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 and then you'd still have an untap trigger to, you know what I mean? They could like, I don't know, maybe I'm nuts, but
I think that works. I mean, it's been a while since I've seen Anya in play, but that sounds like it would work. Like I said, too, like it'll work with if you name Goblin, you got double docksides. If you name Pirate, you've got double triggers on Malcolm, you've got double triggers on Breaches, or either of the new versions that we've talked about. Yeah, I mean, there's... I mean, this slots into anything that's... What are they calling it now? Not typal. Kindred.
Oh,
It's not tribal anymore. It's Kindred, yeah. So in any Kindred deck, this is very, very good, I think.
I'm curious to see if some decks that have adopted Panharmonicon, which the only deck I can even remotely think of that still occasionally plays it is Godo, I think. What if they played this instead? It's a pseudo Panharmonicon for Godo. You name, I think he's a barbarian or something, whatever the hell he is.
He's a samurai, or no, he untaps samurais. He's a barbarian warrior or some shit. I don't remember.
But human this would be double ETB trigger on Godo. So there's your win on 10.
Your hammer and your helm.
Yep, and a 4/4 body with Ward 2. So imagine your Panharmonicon has Ward 2 and legs now that can smash and wear the equipment in case he dies. So I don't know. That's a deck that might look at it. I don't know if they still play Panharmonicon or not, but Panharmonicon with Ward 2 is a hell of a lot better. So
they've been putting that effect on a lot of stuff too. I mean, they did it way back in like Dominaria with Wizards, and then they've done it with I can't even think of all of them. There's been several of them that have that triggered ability triggering again. It almost reminds me of like the Paradox Engine decks that used to just go ham. Like you could really have like a lot of fucking triggers if you could get a Panharmonicon and this and like some of the other effects out that are on creatures. Like holy shit. Not that would ever happen. That's Magical Christmas Land, but still, like the sheer amount of these, you have a lot of redundancy now. At the end of the day, I think the only place that 100% is going to use this, no matter what, is Magda. Everything else is just conjecture at this point. We'll see.
Totally fair. What do we have up next? I think are we on number 1? Even though
we are
not
on
numbered, but
one.
We're on the last one of 10.
We did agree that this is probably one of the better cards in the list, or in the set. But your mileage may vary.
Yeah, in my opinion, it is. But hey, what do I know? It is. Good Lord, I'm going to butcher this one. Kutzil.
I call it Kutzil.
Kutzil. There. I like it. Kutzil. Malamet Exemplar. It is 1 white, 1 green, and 1 for a 3/3 legendary cat warrior. Your opponents can't cast spells during your turn, so it's a silence on a body. Whenever one or more creatures you control, each with power greater than its base power, deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Hate the formatting of the wording of it. I understand what it does, but I hate it. Anyway.
So essentially you have to power up any of your creatures for that second set of text to do anything. So right off the bat, it's legendary and it's Grand Abolisher. We don't have one of those yet. Up to this
Pseudo
point,
Grand Abolisher.
Well, yes. It's Grand Abolisher. It's more so Ranger Captain. It's actually probably closest to the what's that equipment?
Conqueror's Flail? Yeah, there you go.
I think it's the exact wording as Conqueror's Flail.
That sounds right.
Whatever the case, those were the 3 options before this card got printed. Now, granted, you may not be in green and white, so this isn't going to fit into every single list, obviously, as much as Grand Abolisher would, because most decks that are in the format that are on white are playing at least one of those versions, at least Ranger Captain because of the tutor. So you want that protection. This will enable you in like Naya decks that are doing Hulk stuff. You slam this down, they can't stop you. Now, obviously, you already had Grand Abolisher and Ranger Captain and stuff to do that already, so this is just another version of the same thing, and that's what makes it probably the most important. The main thing is that it's legendary, so decks like the Selesnya Sisay can just tutor this out. So they could never tutor out Grand Abolisher before, now they can. The 5-color Sisay can also tutor this out. It gives her 1 extra pip, and then that same ability. Anything else that cares about legendary matters or can tutor for legendaries, like obviously, like I said before, you got the Search for Glory and stuff that can tutor this up for you. Green also can tutor up this. It can get tutored up with Green Sun Zenith or any of the other like Nature's Lore, anything that will tutor a green creature. This can get, which is a big portion of Green's tutor suite, so that's good. And then the secondary part, if you happen to have some sort of anthem. So like, I'm thinking about putting this in Sithis. Well, I had just recently put in the Flowering of the White Tree. Well, that makes Sithis and every other creature bigger. So now all of a sudden, they're all card draw engines. Now, granted, I don't want to swing with most of my creatures in there, but this is more of it's the Grand Abolisher effect, but I have this pseudo extra effect that maybe at some point I draw some cards off this fucker. So I don't see that as being bad, and I think that there's other decks that do adjust power that may... Like, if the cat deck, Arabo, this slots right into that. I know that doesn't usually see competitive play, but still just another example of, like, it has cat synergies as well. So, you know, you can get that buff off of the commander, and then now all of a sudden you're drawing cards too. Notably, it's an uncommon, so I've already brewed a list for this guy in Pauper, and it seems pretty strong. In that case, I'm doing a lot more focus on give things 1/1 counter so that they're higher base power, higher than their base power, and then you can swing to get your card advantage. But then it also has an infinite combo that nobody can interact with because of the clause on it. So you do it on your turn, you just win. So yeah. I think it's a good card.
I think the card's insane. So my notes, I took some notes on it when I was just thinking about it. You can Green Sun Zenith for this. You can't Green Sun Zenith for an Abolisher. You can Summoner's Pact for this. I can't remember if Summoner's Pact only finds green creatures.
I think so.
Green creatures. Yep. So Summoner's Pact finds green creatures. Summoner's Pact finds this. A big one that I run into a lot, more than it's a weird little thing that I think a lot of people forget. Invasion of Ikoria cannot tutor a human, I believe, which is Grand Abolisher. It can tutor this, not a human.
Yep.
Huge, right? Natural Order can find this. Magus of the Order, a weird fringe card, can find this. But the decks where I'm looking at this would be... Oh, also, Delighted Halfling can cast this as a legend and is uncounterable. That's not nothing, right? But I'm thinking not only both Sisays, like you pointed out.
Also in green, if you're playing Allosaurus Shepherd, it can't be countered. So
there
you've
you
got
go.
a couple ways to protect it.
Hell yeah, great point. But I'm thinking both Sisays are playing this. Minsk, like we talked about, if you're a Naya Hulk deck, that's playing it. Rocco might play it. I don't know. They might. I would probably play it if I'm playing Rocco, but I don't know. I don't play Rocco. Najila, this is a warrior.
True.
Najila might play this damn card for being a warrior. I'm going to try it on my Najila list. Jetmir.
It comes down early enough. It's still an attacker. It still makes more bodies.
Yeah, Jetmir is going to play this because it's a Abolisher and Jetmir is going to buff all its dorks, so it's going to draw cards. Tyam might play this. They have some stuff that throws around 1/1 counters, I think, so it can be an Abolisher that can also maybe draw cards. Tim Thrasios might try this just as another Abolisher effect because that whatever. Atraxa might try this as another Abolisher effect. One that I'm kind of surprised you didn't jam in, and maybe you haven't tweaked your list in a minute since you played it, but what was that green-white Elevir?
Yeah, no, I have it on considering there too.
Yeah, hell yeah, because Elevir is going to...
Elevir might also go into Sithis, but that's a different subject.
Yeah, but this is definitely... Elevir is going to buff this, and you're going to get the card draw going. There's also, like, if you have Ignoble or Noble Hierarch in play, with the Exalted trigger, you might draw some cards. 5-color Sisay is going to get bigger already, so she's going to draw cards with this card. Yep. That's huge. This card's nuts. I think
may just be...
crap ton of play.
It's not exactly like Toski or in Frostfang.
There it is.
It's not as good as either of those, but it is cheaper than both. and coincidentally may give you some draw here and there.
Yeah,
but
it's not better than those at card draw. Yeah, it's not better than those at card draw. It's better than those at everything else. Literally, being a 3/3, being an abolisher type effect. I mean, the only other commander that we have with this effect is that Myrel, I think is what it's called, which is the 4-drop mono white thing. It's a true abolisher effect. I think the difference on the difference between abolisher and this is just Conqueror's Flail or Silence. You know, your opponents can't cast spells. Grand Abolisher, they can't
says you
cast
can't activate
spells.
abilities of artifacts or creatures. So
so
Abolisher is still the end-all be-all best version, but this is a different version that has a lot of upside to it that can't be denied. And I don't think that you're not running Abolisher. I don't think you're running this over Abolisher. I think you're running both.
Right. Yeah, 100%. Maybe 5 colors should say plays this instead, but otherwise you're playing both. Yeah.
That's the one exception. That and the both Sisseys, honestly. This might be better because they can tutor
That's
them.
True. That's true.
In every other instance, like most of my decks that are running Abolisher are also running Myrel and also running Ranger, and if I could, I'd probably put this in as well because that redundancy for a deck that wants to combo without getting fucked with is good.
Yeah, if I can jam this in over Myrel, because I'm in green-white, I'm doing it 100% because the 1 mana is huge. Being able to tutor up all those different ways is crazy interesting. And yeah, I think if you're playing white, you're playing Grand Abolisher. You're playing Ranger Captain, probably. You're playing Silence, probably, right? So like another of this effect, especially with, the cards like the One Ring that exist now that are just huge card advantage engines, means there's more counter magic and more just interaction probably available for your opponents on a regular basis. There's so many more card advantage engines that they keep printing, so they're going to have more cards. They're going to be able to interact more with you with countering and stopping your win con. More ways to just say no is great. So I'm going to be playing the hell out of this card.
Yeah, I'm definitely playing it in some places, and then I'm playing it as a commander, so it's already a very solid card. Again, there are, like, if you're in Grixis or whatever, you're not playing this. If you're in anything that doesn't have green, you're not playing this, so that's unfortunate, but, it is what it is. You can't have everything in every deck. But even, like the 4-color piles that aren't on a different color, like they're on green, but not something else, so like, I guess Timothrasios or whatever, like, you're going to play this. If you're on Timnacrom, you can't. So be it. But you still have access to the other ones. So this is just an additional thing that you can add into decks that are either lower color or just happen to have green and white in them. Either way, I don't see why you wouldn't play it if you have the ability to.
The potential to draw off attacking somebody with a walking ballista excites me. What can I say? Or honestly, the stupid orc army is going to draw cards now when it's dealing combat damage, which is huge. So, Marath is green-white. Marath will probably play this. Gav will probably freaking play this.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of other places where 1/1 counters and things like that matter. Yep. Even just being in it, like Selesnya, and just like say you what's the card? Finale of Devastation, not to win, but just to tutor, and then you incidentally can give everything bigger power, and maybe you don't kill the whole board, but you hit everybody with creatures
and some cards,
or whatever the case may be. Like there's going to be something that happens at some point. Your creatures are going to be a little bit bigger, and you're going to draw some cards. So I
Arden Tana, I could see playing that because that's. I mean, honestly, I think you're in green white. You want the Abolisher effect. The Abolisher effects are just so good right now because of all the fucking interaction and all the card draw engines that are out there. Means there's so much more interaction available. I think you want the Abolisher effect above all else. If it had no other lines of text, if it said green, white, 1/3/3, your opponents can't cast spells during your turn, I'm still playing this card in a crap ton of decks. The fact that I'm going to accidentally draw a few extra cards is just gravy. It's all upside.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's icing on the cake. And then it being legendary, I think, is the biggest boon for it. It can be tutored in different ways.
What's the green and 1? Time of Need? Is that another one that tutors green card or tutor legends? It's relevant. It's cool.
There's a lot of legendaries matter stuff out there, and I'm sure you can think of stuff that we've forgotten here. You can leave us comments below, and we'll talk about what you said. But yeah, that ends up rounding out our list. I think that there's quite a bit of power here. The top 10, I think all of those cards are going to see play somewhere, and I think some of those honorable mentions will see play on some more, fringe ends, but still a lot of playable cards. There's a lot of garbage in the set, just like normal, but I think that there's cards that we didn't talk about that still may see some play here and there. We just didn't feel like they were really worth spending, 10, 15 minutes talking about. So, again, your mileage may vary. You may not agree with all of these, and I'm sure if you've watched anybody else's top 10s, they may differ a little bit, but I'm sure some of these cards will be on there as well. Either way, hopefully you guys learned about some new cards. I know I did today, even though the spoiler's been available for a hot minute. But yeah, the set, I believe, comes out this weekend, so y'all should be getting these cards in your hands very soon and playing with them, and you'll be able to see whether or not we're right or wrong. And you can let us know in the comments, like I said. Otherwise, that's all we got for today. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, my only closing thought, this set did a lot to bring your non-tier 1 decks just a little bit closer to being scarier, which I really like. I think the only tier 1 quote-unquote deck that is maybe Najila with this cat being a warrior. I got a huge boon to it. Everything else might have just made your fringe deck a hell of a lot better, which I'm all for. I guess Magda's kind of up there too. But anyway, I like this set for just bringing the power level of a lot of different fringe strategies or non-scene strategies up just a little more. So I'm a fan.
Yeah, I think the Kindred support is good too. Just because, not that pirates were bad or dinosaurs were bad or whatever, but it's just, dinos haven't been competitively viable yet, and I don't know that they will be outside of that Atali or whatever.
Atali might be the only thing, and it's not because it's a dino that it's competitive. It's because it's a stupid card advantage engine.
But, as was expected, we went back to this plane where there was a focus of vampires, dinosaurs, pirates, and merfolk, and we got a few of each of those, and those can all, supplement in some Kindred decks for casual, for some CDH purposes, and then otherwise we just got a few really powerful effects. So I think it's a good set. It's not the most powerful thing. It doesn't feel as busted as some of the last sets that we saw this year, but still a lot of good value, and that's all we can ask for.
Yep.
Outside of maybe not releasing a new set every month, but that's I don't think going to slow down.
If only, friend. Dream big.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to call it here. Thank you all for watching. Like I said, if you want to leave any feedback in the comments, feel free to do so, and we will see y'all in a couple weeks.
Take care.
Laters.